Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca Coles and this is Rebecca's Garden on DVD. We've put together some of the best stories that we've had over the years to bring you this collection of getting started in your garden. Hopefully it's going to help you and inspire you and you'll enjoy getting those hands dirty. And if you like this DVD, you'll like the others that we have in the collection as well, including one on roses, flowers, gardening in the summer, gardening in the fall, and look for our holiday edition. Hope you enjoy the show, and until next time, keep those hands dirty. If you've ever tried growing your own seeds, you know what a pain it can be. It's a major babysitting job. If you miss one day of watering, it's all for naught. So that led us to develop this seed starting system. And I gotta tell you, this is a great system because it requires hardly any effort for you. In fact, all you need to do is take a look at it every couple of weeks. Now the first thing you need for this project, of course, is a rack. And I've searched high and low and I think I finally found the one that works perfectly. It's this wire rack. You see these a lot in restaurants. You can pick them up at kitchen stores or even restaurant supply stores. Now the reason I like this is because the shelves are adjustable, which is very nice. You can order it any size, but what I did is I ordered the size to fit the shop light. This is 4 feet, and this is where the wire rack is nice because all I need to do is attach chain to the light, put on a little S-hook, and I can hang this right from the rack. And one final thing about the lights, you can buy grow lights, which are pretty pricey, or you can save a lot of money and buy simple shop lights, just making sure you have a cool bulb and a warm bulb. These are usually sufficient just to grow the flowers. Another feature that's nice with this plant rack is that it has casters. That way we can move it wherever it needs to go. Okay, now that we've got the unit set up, next thing we need to do is get planting. Success from starting your own seeds comes with watering, and that's the magic of a kit I found from Gardener's Supply. It's a mail order catalog, or you can get more information on our website. And the reason these are so nice is because it has a bottom reservoir. We fill this up with water. On top of that sits a platform that has this wick. This helps pull up water so that when the plants are in the cells, they get water when they need it. You only have to water once every couple of weeks. No matter what container you use for planting, it's important that you use a soilless mixture for your new seedlings. This is very light and airy. And of course, being light and airy, it's important to pre-moisten it before you put it into the container. So I like to open the bag and just dump some water in. Once the flats are filled, it's time for the seeds. And keep in mind, the biggest mistake people make is they plant their seeds too deep. The rule of thumb is to plant them 2 to 3 times their diameter. So for these tiny snapdragon seeds, I'll simply press them into the soil. Then add a layer of sphagnum moss. This prevents a fungus called damping off, which can kill the seedlings overnight. Don't forget to label your plants. Then make sure there's enough water in the bottom of the tray before you stack things up. And finally, to get those seeds to germinate, they need a moist environment. So we're going to add this plastic dome, which acts as a miniature greenhouse. We'll keep this on until we see some green from the seedlings, and then we'll remove it. Until then, it's under the lights they go. Your seedlings will need 10 to 12 hours of light a day, so you might want to invest in a timer so you don't have to worry about the lights coming on. Also, it's important that the lights are as close to the seedlings as possible without touching them. So you can see I've lowered these down. We've got a couple of inches to spare in between, and then as the plants grow, I just adjust the chain. After a few weeks, your seedlings should be green and growing. Don't forget to check the bottom of the tray every 2 to 3 weeks and fill it up when necessary. Now what about fertilizing? Well, once your plants grow 3 sets of new leaves, it's time for them to be fed. And what I like to do is just take a water-soluble fertilizer at half strength, sprinkle that into the water, and then the plants feed themselves as well. It's a great deal. Now eventually these plants are going to outgrow their tiny little space in the cells, and when that happens, you can just pot them up in a larger container. These peat pots are great. Plant the plant inside, put it under the lights, keep it there, and when the weather is finally warm enough, you simply plant these right into your garden. So there you have it, my idea of a self-sufficient seed starting system. This is really a rack that rolls. Last year I had a beautiful plant growing in this pot. Sad story. The plant ended up getting some sort of disease and died. So the last thing I want to do this year is put a plant in the same pot, because you never know what kind of fungus or disease may still be in the pot. So it's always a good rule of thumb. Anytime you're going to reuse any pot, you sterilize it first. What you need to do is get a bucket, fill it up with water and bleach. The ratio is 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. Now what you want to do is take the pot and just dunk it into the water. You'll need a scrub brush to get rid of all the soiled areas, and in some cases you may want to try a wire brush. Make sure you clean the inside as well as the outside. Okay, now this pot is clean. You can go ahead and rinse this under clear, clean water and let it sit for a couple of days. That way, if there's any chlorine left in the pot, it will evaporate in that time. Now, if you find out you have some stubborn stains, like what's left over with the salt buildup and the chlorine solution doesn't get rid of it, then go ahead and take some distilled vinegar, scrub that on the side. It should remove the salt with no problem at all. Now, when you're ready to plant, don't use any of the soil you used last year. Throw that in the compost heap. Instead, start off with new soil that's been sterilized. You can pick it up at the garden center. Hopefully, these tips will keep your plants from biting the dust. Well, if you're like me, come spring, once the snow melts and the ground thaws, you probably can't wait to dig in. And if you're planting warm season crops like tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant, you better restrain yourself, because if you plant these babies too early and there's a nip of frost, it could mean death. Typically, you don't plant your warm season crops until after the last frost, unless, of course, you know a few tricks. For these warm season crops, spring fever begins when the soil temperature is between 60 and 65 degrees. You can see mine's only at 50. If I were to put those plants in now, it would stress them out, it would set them back, which leads me to trick number 1. A layer of black plastic is the perfect way to heat up the soil. Use stakes to secure the corners, then about twice a week take the soil's temperature. The more sun you have, the quicker it will warm up to 60. Once the soil temperature is warm, we're ready to plant our warm season crops. Now I'm going to start with the tomato, and there are many different ways to plant a tomato, but here's a method my grandfather taught me. I've used it for years and it certainly works. I dig 2 holes. In one, I'll place the tomato, so I'll gently remove it from its container. It's got nice creamy white roots. That's a good sign. Gently tear the roots apart and place that in the hole like so. In the other hole, I'll place a small handful of fertilizer. I do it in separate holes. That way the fertilizer doesn't rest right against the roots of the tomato plant. Then cover it up. Now, frost is still in the forecast, and remember, 1 cold night is all it takes to bring these plants down. So that leads me to trick number 2. Here's a product that I've been using for many years with great success. It's called Wall of Waters. It's like a plastic tent. What you need to do is get a large bucket, invert it and place it over your plant, then take the Wall of Waters and place that around the bucket. Then you can see there's these little tiny pockets on the side. We'll fill these with water, and then I'll show you how this works. Once you've filled all the plastic pockets with water, you can then remove the bucket inside. See, isn't that cool? Now what we've done here is created this miniature greenhouse. During the day, the sun heats up the water. That warm water helps to insulate the plant at night. Now eventually the plant is going to shoot off and it's going to grow quickly. It'll come out of the top. At that point you have 2 choices. You can cut the Wall of Waters, except for I like to use it every year. So what I do is squish all the water out and just collapse it and then remove it at the end of the season. Another way to keep your plants warm is with the use of these cloches. They're plastic domes which you slip over the top of your plant. You have to be real careful with these because they can literally cook your plant. So it's important that the top of the cloche has some sort of venting system that will allow the hot air to escape. If you buy one that doesn't have the vent, you can simply cut one out or just make sure you remove these during the day. For the smallest seedlings, like this eggplant, simply dig through your recycling bin. I found this plastic juice bottle, cut out the bottom. It works great as a cloche, and if it's going to be a cold night, I can simply put the lid on top. So there you have it, some tricks on warming things up in your garden. And by trying this, the best part about it is you can extend your growing season by 4 to 6 weeks. Early spring, when temperatures start warming up, if you're like me, you probably can't wait to get in there and dig in. But hold your horses, because too much haste can lead to some serious garden waste. So I thought I'd give you some tips on early spring garden care. First of all, let's talk about the bulbs. They're the first things that come up. If you have mulch around the bulbs, you can go ahead and pull it away from the bulbs, but leave it there, because you never know when a frosty night might threaten the bulbs. That way you've got the mulch, we can easily cover them. Now, if you've had a problem with deer, which I always have a problem with, I have found, and this is very unscientific, that deer don't like anything that smells. So I put cocoa bean mulch down around my bulbs. The deer seem to stay away. It works. You may want to try it. Now for your perennials, leave the mulch on as long as possible. You want to wait until they're actively growing, and once temperatures are above the freezing point, you can slowly start removing it. The beauty of ornamental grass is year-round interest, especially in the winter, but come spring, it's not so pretty anymore. It's real important that we cut this down. Typically, you want to cut it down leaving 6 inches or cut it just above the green growth. Speaking of pruning, early spring is an excellent time to prune your apple trees. What you want to do is get rid of all the dead limbs, any of the little suckers, or any branch that seems to be rubbing against another branch, because that rub will open the tree up to disease. And finally, you definitely don't want to cut your spring blooming shrubs like your azaleas, spirea, or even your lilacs. You cut them now, and you've just cut off this year's blossoms. If you've been growing the same vegetables and flowers year after year, you may want to check out some of the new and improved varieties available this year. Here's a perfect example. This is Bacopa. It's been around for a couple of years, but this new variety, Snowflake, is expected to be a proven winner. The blooms are a little larger, and we're going to see a lot more flowers out of this compact plant. It likes lots of sunshine. Now, if you love verbena, you'll really like the new varieties available this year, Tamari and Tapion. What makes these different is that the blooms are larger and there's a lot more of them. These are great for window boxes and hanging baskets. Now, straw flowers have been around for centuries, but not this new variety called Golden Beauty. It's much more compact. You'll see tons of blooms all season long, and it's a great plant for hot and dry conditions. In the seed category, 2 new and very popular vegetables are red corn and yellow carrots. No, your eyes aren't deceiving you. Because these seeds are so new, the only way you can get them is by ordering them through the Burpee catalog. Now, one new vegetable that is available at the garden centers is Swiss chard. And take a look at this. It's called Bright Lights. Not only does it look great, but it's edible as well. The top greens can be steamed like spinach, and the bottom stalks can be sautéed like asparagus. And the best part, this plant will continue on growing with beautiful color right into the fall season. So keep in mind, when you're planting your garden this year, be a little creative, if not daring. You'll be glad you did. Flowering shrubs like these beautiful azaleas are a sure sign that spring has sprung. When hardly anything else is blooming, they come alive with color. And this is just one of the many varieties of flowering shrubs that can really highlight your garden in the spring. As the first sounds of spring arrive, so do the buds of your favorite flowering shrubs. From the vibrant colors of azaleas and rhododendrons to the soft pastels of lovely lilacs. Not only are their spring bouquets a feast for the eyes, their sweet fragrance is second to none. And of course, there are many other popular spring blooming bushes like forsythia, viburnum, honeysuckle, and spirea. With all of these choices, you're sure to find one that will brighten up the outside of your home. Now, before you pick your plant, you need to consider its size. While some are great around the house, others, if left alone, need room to roam like this lilac. But if you have the space, this makes an excellent screen for noise and traffic. When you go to buy your flowering shrubs, they'll look something like this, but don't be too surprised if they're not in bloom. They just may be past peak, like this forsythia. The thing that you really want to concentrate on is the health of the plant. You want to make sure you examine the leaves, both top and bottom, looking for any kind of insect damage. Also, take a gander at the stems. If they have any nicks or scars, just stay away from them. As far as price goes, keep this in mind. The smaller the container, the less you have to pay. The plant is going to be smaller, But then again, 3 to 5 years, they'll both be the same size. Most of your flowering shrubs appreciate a location that gets at least 6 hours of sun a day. They also like acidic soil, especially your azaleas and rhododendrons. So I went ahead and mixed in some pine needles and peat moss to help raise the acidity. Now, as far as time of the year to plant, I prefer planting them in the spring simply because they get more time to get established. Any time during the growing season is going to be fine as long as it's not during extreme heat. Now, as far as planting, the same rules apply with any perennial and shrub. You want to dig a hole that's as deep as a container and about 2 to 3 times as wide. Once you've dug the hole, gently remove the plant from its container, and in most cases you'll notice that the roots will be either root bound or all matted. So it's important to loosen them up. You can do that simply by scoring the roots. Now place the plant in the hole, and you want to make sure that the soil surface is level with the crown, which is this area here. Then just backfill. Now by itself, one is beautiful, but add a couple together and you've got a dramatic, beautiful appearance. So I'm going to stagger these behind me and you'll see what it looks like. So there you have it. Now just keep your plants well watered. I'm not going to worry about fertilizing since the soil's already amended, but maybe next year and the years after that I'll come through with a light side dressing of fertilizer. Now notice how I planted these close together. I kind of broke the rules, but I did that because I want this corner to lighten up every spring. So in order to keep them healthy and well maintained, I need to cut them back every year. Now, once your shrubs start growing, you can let them go or you can keep them in check by pruning. However, you must be prudent with your pruning because if you wait too long, you'll cut off next year's heads. So what you want to do is once the flowers have faded, like on this rhodie, you have 6 weeks to get in there and do your pruning. You can take off a little just to shape it up, but never take off more than 1/3. Hopefully by following these rules, you'll have beautiful flowering shrubs that you can enjoy for years to come. Have you ever noticed that when spring arrives and the temperatures warm up, suddenly neighbors you haven't seen all winter long come rushing out of their homes almost as if the gates are open? They're all anxious to get their luscious lawns in shape. And you know what? You see it all. They're seeding, weeding, fertilizing, power raking, aerating, they're blowing, trimming, and of course mowing. And sometimes they're doing it all in one day. Not a good idea. There are some definite do's and don'ts when it comes to spring lawn care that you should know. Now, before you get started doing anything, you need to make a couple of decisions. First of all, do you want to control the crabgrass or do you want to lay down new lawn seed? Because you can't do both. The crabgrass controller will actually prevent the lawn seed from germinating. So let's say you have crabgrass and you want to control that. Well, you need to attack it early in the spring before it gets out of control. You can use a crabgrass preventer, or for an organic alternative, try corn gluten. Whatever you choose, use a spreader to apply it evenly. The best time to do this is when the daffodils are blooming. And remember, spring rains will help activate the ingredients. Now, if you decide to start a new lawn, or in this case patch an old one, you need to start by loosening up the soil. Just use a rake. Okay, now we're ready for the seed. Make sure whatever you get that it's top quality. You can save a lot of money and buy the seed in bulk, or for more money you can get a product that I really like. It's seed that's mixed with shredded newspaper. This stuff really works. Let me show you how. Apply a thin layer of the lawn patch, making sure you cover up all the open spaces, and then water thoroughly. Now, whether you use the lawn patch or the seed, it's real important that you keep your new bed moist at all times until the seed germinates, which in some cases may take up to 3 weeks. And also, you don't want to mow the grass until it reaches a height of 4 inches. And speaking of mowing, before you take your machine to the turf, it's real important to get it cleaned up and ready for the season. Start by flipping the mower over. You'll want to give the underside a good spring cleaning. And in some cases, you may have to pull out a chisel to remove some of the junk. It's also a good idea to keep your blade sharpened. In fact, 3 sharpenings a season will do the trick. Otherwise, your grass will get split ends. Don't you hate when that happens? When you do mow, don't cut off more than 1/3 of the grass at one time, and keep the height about 2.5 to 3 inches. Also, change your mowing pattern. This helps prevent soil compaction, which inhibits the growth of grass. Watering is also an important part of spring lawn care. It's much better to give your lawn a deep soaking once a week rather than a light sprinkling 3 to 4 times a week. Watering early in the morning is best, and keep in mind most lawns need about 1 inch of water a week. Spring is also the time to go on weed patrol. Ha ha! Gotcha! Now, since I don't like to use herbicides, I try to find tools that might help get to the root of the problem, and I have found the Weed Hound always does the trick. The biggest mistake people make with their grass is that they fertilize it to death, literally. The best time to feed your lawn is with 2 applications in the fall. The only reason you would fertilize in the spring is if you miss the fall application. And don't worry if you think your lawn's not getting fed enough, because every time you mow your grass, if you leave the clippings on, you're giving it free nitrogen. And that's the best organic fertilizer you can get. There are some definite don'ts when it comes to spring lawn care. Don't aerate. It can damage the soil because the soil is just too moist in the spring. Plus, aeration opens up areas for weed seeds to germinate. And forget about power raking or dethatching. This is just too hard on the new sensitive spring roots. And finally, in the early spring when your soil is still soggy, try to keep your kids from playing on the grass, and for heaven's sakes, don't be dragging your wheelbarrow across it either. Hopefully these tips will make your neighbors green with envy. For more information on spring lawn care, check out my website at Rebecca'sGarden.com. When spring arrives, I can't wait to head to the garden center to see what's blooming, and it's always the annuals that catch my eye. They can quickly transform a bare patch of soil into a glorious garden, and unlike perennials, annuals give color all summer long. They are the flowers that you must plant every year. Seems like a lot of work? Not when you see your return. Annuals are the plants that steal the show. No matter your soil or sun, annuals are the answer for lush blooms that keep the garden alive with a dazzling display of color. Whatever size or shape you need, there's definitely an annual ready to fit the bill. Now, your annuals can be divided in 2 different categories. We have the cool season and the warm season. The cool season flowers can go into the ground once you can work it and typically will withstand a frost or 2. They include your pansies, violas, alyssum, which smells so sweet, and of course the snapdragons. And the best part about the cool season flowers, they give us that first burst of color in the spring. We can shave them down in the summer, and then they'll rebloom with full delicious color in the fall. Another popular cool season annual is the silvery dusty miller. Its foliage makes a striking display when planted next to brightly colored flowers. Larkspur, with its delicate spikes of flowers in pastel shades, also grows well in cooler conditions. And remember, forget-me-nots. They offer blue mounds of color in the garden. Started once from seed, and they'll reseed themselves year after year. The second category is the warm season annuals. These are the plants that like the hot weather, and they will not do well if it gets too cold, so you want to wait until after your last frost before you put them in the ground. They include geraniums, marigolds, petunias. These are great for sunshine, but if you have shade, you can't go wrong with beautiful begonias. And then there's the impatiens. They offer great spots of color, from the New Guinea impatiens to the double flowering. Other warm season annuals that come alive with color in the heat of summer include Nicotiana, also known as flowering tobacco, which perfumes the air. Or how about salvia, which offers a variety of colorful blooms. If you're looking for texture, try celosia. Or how about some of Grandma's favorites, like zinnias and cosmos. To ensure that you get healthy plants, make sure you use a little common sense when you buy them. If you notice holes in the leaves, you might want to stay away from those. It may mean that there's an insect problem. Also, compare plants. You've got a tall, skinny one here, a short, stocky one. go for the short stocky one. This one is growing out of its pot. It's a little more stressed. As far as blooms go, I know you're going to want to reach for the ones with the most flowers. However, you're really better off if you go for those that haven't opened up yet. These are younger plants, and it means that they'll transplant easier into your garden with less shock. Now remember, even if you don't have space for a garden, annuals look great on a patio or deck, in a container, or in a hanging basket. This is fuchsia, and it's great for shade. Bacopa, lobelia, or any of the wave petunias will send a cascade of color over the edge of any pot or basket. And if you want annuals that grow up, morning glories, sweet peas, or mandevilla love to travel on a trellis. Now, it doesn't take much to keep your annuals looking beautiful all summer long. Make sure you keep them watered, and don't forget to feed them about every 3 weeks. I like to use a water-soluble fertilizer. And finally, it's real important that you pinch off the spent blooms. That way, it will continue providing you with color all summer long, right into fall. I don't know about you, but I love the smell and the look of fresh spring flowers. And if you're like me, you probably pop them into a vase. And although this looks great, I met a designer who's going to show us how to take these simple flowers and change them into these fabulous floral topiaries. It's great for any special occasion. Ironically, I met Peggy Pribble while I was out shopping for flowers. She's the one that turned me on to these great topiaries. And Peggy, you look at this thing, you go, oh, that might be a little difficult to do, but you're going to say, no, it's not.
They're really not.
Okay, so what do we need then to do this?
What you're going to need to do is look around your house and find a base.
Anything will do as long as there are
there's
no
no
holes in the bottom. That's important.
Exactly, you want the water to stay in there. Then we're going to need some floral foam, known as Oasis.
Okay.
And we cover that with some sheet moss. And then we're going to need a roll of floral tape, some wire. We've got some ribbon here to choose from. And
we're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
Okay, so let's pick out a container.
Okay.
You can show me. I'll do this one.
And I'll take this one.
Okay.
Okay, here we have our containers. Now, we're going to take our Oasis floral foam.
Okay.
And we're going to fit that snug into the container. We're going to take the knife, cut it off at the height of the top of the container.
Okay, I can do this. After you've cut the Oasis, make sure it fits firmly in the container. Then poke holes in it. Next, pour water all over the foam so that it's totally saturated. Now you're ready to add the moss on top. Just be sure to tuck in the edges.
Might have to rip a little off. All right, now we're ready for our flowers. We've got some Alstroemeria here. These work well. They've got a good, sturdy, tall stem. And I'm going to hand you these, and I'm going to have you take off some of the leaves. We want to clean it up a little bit.
Okay.
This variety is called Rebecca.
Oh, I thought it looked good.
Okay, I've arranged my tulips here, so I'm ready to use the tape on mine. Now what I want you to do is loosely hold your flowers up towards the top.
Oh, towards the top?
Towards the top, and just position them around a little bit until
They look good.
they're looking good to you.
What do you think?
Looks good to me.
I'm thinking it's
All
looking
right.
good. All right.
Now we're ready for the floral tape.
Great. Make sure you wrap the floral tape around the stems several times. Do this near the top and the bottom. This will help keep the stems firmly together. Next, determine the height that you want your flowers and then cut off the stems. Now just poke a hole in the Oasis and insert your topiary flower arrangement.
All right, now we're ready to choose some ribbon.
All right, I'll take
To make
this
our
white
bow.
one.
You're going to do the white? Okay.
For the best looking bow, Peg recommends making 4 to 5 loops. Then take a piece of the floral wire and wrap it around the ribbon connecting all the loops. To secure the finished bows, tuck the floral wire under the tape and add several bows to each arrangement. Wow, so that's it. This took us about 10 to 15 minutes. Really very easy, and it's interesting how the final touch, the ribbon, really kind of set the whole feeling of the bouquet. Raffia, loose, casual bouquet. The white ribbon really changed my arrangement into a more formal feel.
Exactly. I've done a couple other pieces here using some other ribbon. Let me show you how it looks.
Okay. Now this arrangement screams baby shower. Tell us what you've done here.
Okay, just real simple. I've added some diaper pins hanging from the ribbon. I've got a little rattle here that I've stuck in here. And I've chosen yellow freesia because we don't know if it's a boy or a girl, so we've got the pink, blue, and the yellow going there.
That is adorable. This one, no doubt, for the wedding.
Exactly. It's a much more formal look. The tulle determines that along with the satin ribbon, and depending on the colors that the bride has chosen, you can change the color. And we've got the rubrum lily, which is traditionally a more elegant and formal flower.
Well, thank you so much, Peg. You've given us some great ideas on how to decorate for those special occasions this spring. And keep in mind, we started out with a vase of flowers that looked like this and ended up with these fabulous topiaries. Which do you think looks best? When we talk about planting bulbs, usually it's in the fall. However, there are some bulbs that you can plant late spring. They're called summer bulbs, and the exotic blooms they can add to your garden will give you fire and spark unlike anything you've seen before. In the dog days of summer, when a lot of plants are beaten down by the hot sun, we find these beauties just hitting their stride. It can be hard to choose between the beautiful dahlias, gladiolas, cannas, caladiums, and the tuberous begonias. But once you've figured out what you're going to plant, the rest is really a piece of cake. Although they're called summer bulbs, they're really broken into several different categories. For instance, we have what's called the rhizome. These are underground horizontal stems that produce the beautiful canna. Caladium and begonias come from what's called tubers. They kind of look like swollen smash bulbs with roots. Then we have the tuberous root. From these we get the dahlias. And then there are the corms. They kind of look like a smash bulb. These produce the glorious gladiolas. Now it's important to know the category since the planting technique for each flower is different, especially with the dahlias. Now what I've done for them is dug a hole that's about 6 inches deep. Now I'm going to make a mound in the center of the hole, and that's going to be about 2 inches tall. Now before you plant the dahlia, it's important to inspect each tuber. If they're hanging by a thread like this one here, you have to remove it. Otherwise, when you plant this, it will rot and could affect the whole structure of the flower. So get out the pruners and remove any suspicious looking roots. Then drape the roots over the mound in the hole. Okay, now once that's in place, it's time to stake the dahlia. It seems a little early, but we're going to do it now because we don't want to injure any of the tubers later as they begin to grow. So we'll put the stake in as close to the stem as possible, then we're ready to cover it up. Now I filled the hole halfway full. The next step is to take some bulb food, just sprinkle that over the top. This will give the bulb its little boost to get growing, and then we'll add another inch of soil around that. And in no time, these beauties will give you blooms sometimes the size of dinner plates. Now, if you prefer things on a smaller scale but still want to enjoy those hot, bold colors, how about growing caladiums for their vibrant foliage? Or begonias. These plants have provided generations with rich colors that look good enough to eat. Now, the biggest challenge you're going to have when it comes time to plant the tubers is trying to figure out which way you plant them. Well, with the caladium, it's easy. Just look for the flattened area. You want to make sure you put that down into the hole facing the soil. With the tuberous begonias, well, if they have the stems, you know you want to plant those facing up. Otherwise, just make sure the concave area is looking up at you when you plant them. In any case, both of these are buried 2 to 3 inches below the soil surface. And keep in mind, these tubers like the shade. Corms are planted just like you would the fall bulb. First of all, you want to find the points. Those go into the ground looking up at you. We'll plant these about 4 inches deep. And if you want a successive look of gladiolas, make sure you stagger the planting, which means every week plant a few more. As you see, glads can add a variety of color with great height to any garden. These slender beauties also make a great cut flower. Or how about bringing a little bit of the tropics into your backyard with cannas? And don't think their flowers are the only appeal. Their foliage can be just as stunning. Cannas are rhizomes, which leads us to the next category. Now, before you plant your rhizomes, it's important to inspect them carefully because sometimes you can't see the rot. But if you feel around and you feel a soft area like this right here, take a knife and just cut it off. Now, the rhizomes can be planted really any direction, but if there is a bend in the rhizome like this one here, make sure you have the points closest to the soil surface. When you plant them, the hole is going to be very shallow. In fact, I've dug it out, it's about 1.5 to 2 inches deep. Just place the rhizome in the hole, cover it up with soil, and then we're going to scratch in a little fertilizer to give it a boost. And then with all the bulbs, you want to make sure you keep them watered throughout the summer and make sure you scratch into fertilizer once a month. And keep in mind, these are summer bulbs, which means they don't like the cold weather. So come fall, when frost is in the air, you're going to have to dig these up, store them, and you can use them again next year. If you have a passion for purple, pay particular attention because we've picked plants perfect for producing a garden pretty in purple. Try saying that 5 times.
If you have a passion for purple, then pay attention because
We picked the perfect plants for
paralleling what? Pay particular attention.
to produce a purple people.
purple passion people.
Okay, enough playing around. Now let's get serious. We're going to start with one of my favorites. Take a look at this beautiful Korean standard lilac. It's filled with petite flowers that perfume the air. The canopy is a perfect complement for the purple tulips below. And purple never tasted so good. That is if you're growing chives. These pastel blooms are not only pretty, but they're perfect for the palate. Try these in your soups, salads, or when making herbal vinegars. Catmint is another popular purple herb, and of course there's lavender. Other shades of purple pleasers include bearded iris, alliums. These globes of purple florets bloom on tall, slender stems, offering eye-popping color. And don't forget about these purple prizes: centaurea, campanula, climbing clematis, and purple coneflower. And one final pointer, these plants are perennials, which make them perfect for pawning off to other people so they too can grow a pretty purple paradise. Whew, I'm glad that's over. I'm pooped. It's spring, your garden's ready, and if you're like me, you can't wait to sink your hands in the soil. If you started any of your plants from seed, before you introduce them to the great outdoors, you have to acclimate them. Otherwise, they'll fry from too much sun or the wind will dry them out. You can get them ready by hardening them off, which means toughen them up. Now, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get your plants hardened off or used to the sunshine. You'll want to start the first couple of days by moving them to a location that gets complete shade all day long, is protected from the wind, and if you expect any drastic changes in the temperatures, you'll want to move them back indoors. After a few days, move your plants into a shady spot that gets dappled sunlight. Then every couple of days, slowly inch them out toward the sunshine so that by the end of 2 weeks, they're in full sun and ready to take it on. Okay, after this little exercise, your plants are now ready to sink their feet into the soil. When planting, the same rules apply. You want to dig a hole that's as deep as a container. Check out the root system. If the roots are all tangled at the bottom, you want to make sure you tease them apart, loosen them up. That way they'll spread their feet. Then just plant them as normal, keep them watered, keep them fed, and in no time, they're going to be reaching for the sun. Tulips are some of my favorite flowers, probably for various reasons. They're the first sure sign of spring, and they're the first splash of color we see after a long winter. Now, the blooms don't last that long, but boy, when they peak, they can be spectacular. But eventually, those beautiful blooms will fade and look something like this. Your first inclination is going to be to come out and saw the plants down, but don't do that because now the plant is storing energy for next year's bulb. What you can remove, however, are the spent blooms. In fact, you don't want them to go to seed, so just remove the top. Now, if you want to remove the stem as well, you can. What you can't remove is the foliage, because that is what's sending energy down to next year's bulb. So you want to let it die back naturally. After a while, it's going to turn yellow and not look so good. If that's going to bother you, simply roll it up and secure it with a rubber band. Another way to conceal your bulbs is to plant perennials. While the foliage from your bulbs is dying down, the perennials are growing up. Another way to maintain the health of next year's bulb is to fertilize. You'll know it's time when the foliage starts turning from green to yellow. Simply scratch in an all-purpose fertilizer around the base of the flower. By following these easy tips, you'll be able to enjoy big, beautiful blooms again next spring. the way to mow the lawn. I don't know about you, but I find mowing the lawn to be a chore and a lot of hard work. But you know what? Times have changed. Mowers are a lot easier to operate, they're safer, and they're quieter. There's a lot of choices out there, as you'll see. You just have to know which mower is right for you. Lori Hadia is one of the lawnmower experts here at Home Depot. She has some great advice for those of you who might be in the market for a new mower. What's the first thing we need to do, Lori?
Well, there's a lot of choices out there, so the first thing you want to do is just arm yourself with a good checklist on what your mowing needs will be. You want to think about the size of your lawn and whether you want to mulch or bag or do both. You want to think about if you've got any noise restrictions and who's going to be mowing. Do you have children that are going to be mowing? How much exercise do you want while you're mowing? And of course, there's always the cost.
Oh, that's a big one. Okay, well, let's take a look at some of the options available.
Great. Rebecca, this is your basic mower right here. This one does not have all the gizmos and gadgets a lot of lawnmowers have. It doesn't come with a bagger, but it does shoot the clippings right out the side here. It's not built to be a mulcher, but you can buy a mulching blade to convert it if you'd like.
Now, what's the cost of this one?
This one is very affordable. It starts about $100.
Oh, great for somebody on a limited budget then.
Exactly. Now here's the next step up. This one is still a push mower. It's not self-propelled, so you can still get your exercise. But this has a lot of features and benefits that the other one didn't have. This is what we call a 3-in-1. It comes with the bagger. It's also made to be a mulching mower, so you don't have to change the blade, or you can side shoot. And the really neat thing about this is it's just so easy to change the bag.
Oh my gosh, it used to be so hard. And I noticed the bag is on the back.
Yeah, it makes for a lot more even mowing, I guess. All the weight is back here instead of on one side or the other.
And what about getting around trees?
Much easier.
All right, now, so what's the deal with the big tires?
This has gotten to be a really popular feature on lawnmowers. It goes over bumpy areas a little bit better and just makes for smoother mowing.
Now, this lawnmower has all the same features, except this one is self-propelled, which means less muscle is needed on this one, right?
It's a lot less work. The wheels actually turn themselves, so all you have to do is guide the mower where you want it to go.
Ooh, I like that benefit. Now, tell me, one says rear-wheel drive, the other one says front-wheel drive. It's kind of like buying a car. What's the difference with a mower?
The front-wheel drive is a newer feature on lawnmowers, and it's great if you've got a lot of tight little areas or you want to get in and out between bushes. But in most cases, you're going to want to stick with your rear-wheel drive. If you're bagging, if you have hills, if you're just going back and forth a lot, this is a lot better option.
Oh, good. Now, the safety latch here, a lot of the mowers now have it, is that right?
Yeah, this is a law that your lawnmower has to have some kind of a kill switch on it, where all you have to do is let go of it, and it automatically turns the blade off.
Oh, that's especially nice if you have a teenager cutting the grass.
It's a lot safer.
What are we talking cost for these mowers?
Depending on which one, they run about $250 to $400.
Okay. Next, we have the electric lawnmowers, the lawnmowers of the future, simply because there's no pollution associated with these mowers. They're quiet and really quite low maintenance. Now, we have two different kinds here.
Right. This one has the cord attached. You need to plug it in, and this one is a cordless, battery-powered mower.
Now, I think I really like this one because I've had the one with the cord, and it's a little monotonous trying to keep the cord out of the blade's way. Plus, if you have a larger lawn, you need a lot of cord.
Exactly. This one's really nice. This one will do about 1/4 of an acre on a single charge, or you can get an even bigger one that's a mulching bagger.
Same thing as all the others.
3-in-1 that'll do a 1/2 acre on a single charge.
Wow. And what is the cost of these?
They start at about $150 and go up to about $500.
So same thing. And then you have the riding mower. Definitely a machine for the big jobs. Lori says this works great if you have a 1/2 acre or more, and it also has a feature where you can add attachments, so you can seed, fertilize, aerate, even dethatch. As you can see, there's a lot of different choices when it comes to buying lawnmowers. You just have to figure out which one is going to work best for you. And then you do what I do. You train the neighbor kid to use it. When you think of wreaths, you probably think fall or holidays. Well, the seasons are changing, and so are wreaths. So out with the old and in with the new. Today I'm going to show you how to use spring flowers to dress up your door and show you a new twist on wreaths. So as as you can see, not all wreaths have to be round. In fact, use your imagination. I'm going to show you how you can start by making this one here. It's a very nice wild look, and a lot of the materials you may already have, and some of it might be growing in your own backyard. For this one, you need to start off with a foundation. And for that, we stopped by a craft store and picked up this simple wreath. This is what we're going to build this entire wreath on. You'll need some wire. I've got Spanish moss here, some pots, of course plants, a little bit of ribbon, and twigs. And for this, we're using pussy willow and dogwood. For the first step, we're going to make small bundles of red dogwood. Cut the twigs to a length of about 6 to 8 inches. The bundle should contain about 6 to 8 sticks. Then take the wire and fasten them securely. Leave some extra wire at the end to attach to the wreath. Now, once you get the bundles, you want to attach them to the wreath with the wire like so, and then we'll continue adding the rest of the bundles, trying to overlap on top of each other, and the point here is we're covering up the wreath below. Now for the next step, we want to create this vertical line here. In order to do that, you need to get yourself some pussy willow, bundle it together, we'll attach it with wire at the top, and then simply braid the branches together. Once you're done braiding, use some wire to secure it. Then simply place the braid in the center of the wreath and wire it into place. Now you just want to fill in around the edges by using bits and pieces of the pussy willow and dogwood. We want to fill it in so we create this nice wild effect. Once you're done nipping and tucking, then you need to add the flowers. And for that step, I took a plain terracotta pot. I made mine look distressed by adding some paint. You could leave it plain. Added some ribbon, tied a knot in it, and then I'll place the ribbon right around the top. Okay, so there you have it, a nice touch of spring right at your doorstep. This next project is as easy as digging through your recycling bin. What we're looking for is cans, like your soup cans, bean cans, whatever can you have. You can see I've drilled holes on the bottom and then 2 holes on the side. What you want to do is place a plant on the inside, take some wire, attach that, that's going to be the handle. And then, once again, take a bundle of sticks like I've done here. We've attached them with wire, made this little hanger, and then once the cans are planted, put them on the wire, and there you have it, an adorable, reusable, recyclable swag. If you want something that's a little more dressy, that has a vertical appeal, you might like this arrangement. It's very simple. We simply gathered up some sticks, and you can see we've attached them with wire, making the bundle once again. And as far as the flowers are concerned, this is the easy part. All you need to do is pick up these little cardboard cones. You can find them at any craft store. To the outside of that, we glued on this moss. Then, on the inside, you go ahead and plant the flowers of your choice, add some ribbon, and there you go. See, look how nice this looks. I think it's a great invitation on any door. And the best part about these wreaths is that we can change out the flowers as the seasons change. So once we get into the heat of summer, we can take out the pansies and replace them with something like an impatient, lobelia, or even alyssum. Like most kids, I grew up saying yuck to eggplant, but it seems like today, everywhere you turn, people are tantalizing their taste buds with this tropical vegetable. Now, if you go to the grocery store, this is probably what you'll find. But if you choose to grow your own, I think you'll be surprised to find so many different varieties of eggplant available in different shapes, colors, and sizes. They're dark purple, they're white, they're even striped. From long and thin to short and round, there are now over 80 different varieties of eggplant. The flavors vary depending on the variety. Some can be a tad bitter, but the long and slender Asian types are more mild tasting, and the white eggplant is the sweetest of all. No matter which variety you choose, planting is the same. Now you have 2 choices. You can buy transplants from a garden center, or you can start your own from seed, and that way you'll have more varieties to choose from. Just be sure you plant them about 6 to 8 weeks before you're going to plant them outdoors. So when is a safe time to plant them outdoors? After all threats of frost. Remember, these are tropical plants. They like warm conditions. And the soil temperature has to be warm enough too. So how warm is warm? take a look at your chives. When they're in bloom, you know it's time for the eggplant to go in. They like hot, sunny conditions, so make sure your location gets plenty of sunshine at least 6 to 8 hours a day. And you want well-drained soil, something amended. Here we added some alfalfa mulch, peat moss, cow manure, and compost. So this soil is ready. Now we're ready to dig in. Start by digging a hole as deep as the container. Then carefully remove the eggplant. Place it in the hole and cover it up. Be sure to label each variety and try to space each plant about 2 feet apart. Each row should be about 3 to 4 feet apart. All right, now that we've got them planted, it's important that you keep these well watered. They will get very thirsty, and don't worry about fertilizing until you see little baby fruits developing. If there's any threat at all for frost or really cold temperatures, it's important you keep them covered overnight, or you can take a milk jug or juice container, cut out the bottom, and simply slip it over the top. This is a perfect cloche, will keep them warm overnight. Now the hard part, we just have to sit back and wait for a few months, and in no time, we're gonna be picking our own eggplant. While it's growing and as the weather warms up, add a layer of mulch around the base of the plant. This helps the soil retain water while keeping competition from weeds at bay. Also, once the plant sets flowers, which then grow into small fruits, it's time to fertilize with fish emulsion every 3-4 weeks. This will help boost your bounty and help avoid pest problems. And the best part about eggplant is you can harvest it once the fruit is set, because actually the younger the eggplant, the sweeter it tastes. If you wait too long, it starts tasting bitter. You just want to be sure that the skin of the eggplant is nice and glossy. And notice how I press into it? See, there's no indent. That means this eggplant is ready to be eaten. You'll need a pair of sharpened pruners when harvesting eggplant. The stems tend to be tough and woody, not to mention laden with tiny spines. Simply cut the stem about 1 to 2 inches away from the eggplant. Boy, look how beautiful. This is called blue marble. There's also Ichiban, and how about this creamy white Cloud 9? Now here's a beauty. This is called Neon Flash, or how about this one? Perfect for me. It's called Diva. And like most vegetables, remember, the more prudent you are when picking your eggplant, the more fruits the plant will produce. So what do you do with all that extra eggplant coming out of the garden? How about a simple recipe? It's eggplant marinara. You need eggplant that's sliced to about 1/4 inch thick, your favorite spaghetti sauce, shredded mozzarella, a little bit of olive oil, some garlic salt, and for garnish, maybe some basil or oregano. You're going to start by cutting the eggplant, again, 1/4 inch slices. After slicing the eggplant, lay it out on a baking sheet and brush on some olive oil. Then sprinkle with some garlic salt. Flip the eggplant over and do the same thing to the other side. Let this sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. The eggplant will soak up the oil and the salt will help take away the bitterness. At this point, we want to place the eggplant either on a grill or under a broiler just long enough to get it charred just a bit so it looks something like this. Then we're going to spoon the spaghetti sauce right on the top of each slice of eggplant. All right, now we'll just sprinkle on some mozzarella. You can also garnish the top with some chopped basil or oregano. Then put the eggplant under the broiler for just a few minutes. Wait until the cheese is melted and bubbly, then remove. Now just assemble the eggplant on a platter and this is what you get. Eggplant marinara. But don't tell the kids that. Tell them it's personal plant pizza. Then they'll eat it. That was a lot of information. Hope you got all that down, and I want to see those hands. Well, like I said, if you've enjoyed this DVD, be sure to look for the others. I'm Rebecca Coles. Until next time, keep those little hands dirty.